I'm not going to make this run long, but I just wanted to give you, as an audience, a chance to sort of express any thoughts, disbelief, belief, opportunities, looking at how we pitch this from AI technology through to augmentation, through to the wider upskilling of workforces. There was a hand here to start with. Thank you, sir.
I'm George. I work for AMBA, the Association of MBAs. And I really liked Vera's survey at the beginning with the 3 questions. Something that happened to me yesterday on my work computer, I had a Windows Office update, and then there was this thing showing in the bottom, pilot. And it turned out it's a Microsoft AI. And the difference with before, when I had to find the website and do a search on AI, now it shows on the right side of my screen. So it's not even a separate window. It's on the same screen. And I guess this will change the outcome to the response to use it daily. If it's on the screen, it will start being used daily. What other solutions do you find easy to use? They're out there, but what's the easiest?
What's the easiest? So, I mean, first of all, it demonstrates the ubiquity, I think, that we are experiencing right now everywhere. So it's amazing that they do that. I don't have a Windows computer, so I don't have that myself. Well, I think it's really getting engaged with it. So yeah, it has become even easier. So the convenience is extremely big. But I think it's simply trying it out and more people trying it out for more tasks. And also probably, and that's a discourse and I don't know where it will go, but is it okay to use it? Because I also sometimes hear like, but then, you know, if I co-create it, if I augment it, it's maybe not my own work. Do I really want to do this? You know, can I leverage this? Yes or no? And I think you had the nice gender example you could maybe share. Mm-hmm. So I think also on a social kind of societal discourse level, we will have these things and it will evolve. But yeah, ubiquity obviously is a key driver.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, just building on that, I think there's something fascinating about, essentially ideas are an extension of ourselves. There's research to show that. And so suddenly we're delegating this extension of ourselves to someone else. So there's interesting issues of ownership. There was a survey reported, I think it was on the BBC last week, that generally in the workplace, women are less likely to admit to using GPT over issues of the perception of cheating and so on. Now, this is really just shining a light on other wider issues of competence and so on, and that clearly has to be addressed. I think the point about Copilot is fascinating. It's a little bit away from creativity, but I think one of the most profound things I've read over the last 12 months was written by John Norton, who writes in The Guardian. He said, the future of AI will be mundane, because it will just become the norm. It will be embedded in everything that we use. It's already in my phone, it's in your car, it's already there. So it's going to become part of our everyday world. And I should say the generative AI part and the sort of support for creative thinking. And I think that was the most profound thing I've read on the subject, going back to Copilot. Mark, are you wishing to comment?
No, I'm listening intently to the two of you.
All right, okay. Any other questions? The gentleman here on each.
So this is more a targeted question, less of a question, more about feedback on business parks. When we're writing business plans, business cases are trying to be creative. It's not black and white. I think business parks is a bit black and white because we also have to tailor it to the stakeholders, to the personalities, to their risk averseness and so on, or they're probably more risk takers than anything else. And it'll be great to see those nuances in the tool that allow us to target the ideas that we generate to the recipients and stakeholders of those ideas.
No, I agree. I mean, we're really in the foothills of these kinds of technologies. I think there's a huge amount of research to be undertaken in understanding the human-AI relationship around this. There's all sorts of issues of professional identity. If you're a creative professional, or we talked about it, the architect friend here, you know, if this tool is doing things that you thought that's you, then there's a huge threat to your professional identity and status. There's this issue of ideas being extensions of selves. There's contradictory findings around productivity. Sometimes the machine-generated ideas are less accepted and so on. So there's a huge space for us to explore around that will shape these technologies. So I completely acknowledge that from my point of view. And
yeah, I can only tune in on that.
We have to pilot and we have to prototype and we have to understand. And I think that's where we are at the moment. Gentleman at the front.
Well, thank you. Thank you for your presentations. Just to introduce myself, I'm a professor of corporate governance at the University of Lincoln and have been for 10 years. But just on top of that, of course, I'm aged 93. But I have two concerns about AI. I mean, I've lived through the computer revolution since the 1970s. But the two concerns are, one, how it's going to be controlled. And that's the subject of a lot of discussion and debate. But the other concern is, how is it going to make the world a better place for everyone to live in? Now, in these presentations, there's very little reference given to the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals and the aspirations of the United Nations for a much better world and the transformation of what we live in today into a much better, for everyone here today, but not only you, your families and your children and your grandchildren. And I mean, and I see little reference to that with AI.
I mean,
so I'd just like your comments on that, please.
I mean, I will start. And in the meantime, we can pass the microphone to the lady in the green next to my colleague, Sarah, just to keep things moving. I mean, certainly, in the end, AI, I keep saying this, AI is just software. It's just instructions, albeit rather complicated ones. And so it does what we ask it to. And we've designed, the Design Sparks tool that I showed very quickly has been extended to direct people towards creative ideas for more circular design, for example. And we did that in response to a partnership that we started in the summer with the Ellen MacArthur Foundation. So we can design these technologies. It's less about the AI per se. It's about what we ask it to do and what we design it to do. It's a material. And so we should think of AI as a material. And we should shape it in the ways that we want it to do. So I think you're right, and there's all sorts of discussions around the SDGs and so on.
That bigger picture.
Yes.
We should be linking AI into.
Well, I think we are trying to support human creativity, and creativity is more or less, I would say it's better a good thing. There are views that a lot of the sort of more extreme right-wing groups have been quite creative in how they operate, and that's probably a bad thing, and I would support that view. But trying to make people more creative generally makes people happier. And I think that's a good thing. Vera?
Yeah, I agree. I agree with what you said. In the end, it is a tool that can help in certain areas, and then it's about what we do with it. And I'm with you. We need, there are discourses about what kind of law do we want. We see different attempts of how to try and give some guardrails. It's very difficult. At the same time, I can also see very positive opportunities, especially maybe for members of society in countries that don't have access to so much knowledge as we do, where we can, go to our co-workers easily and so on. And there I could see a very positive impact in that they can get stimulated by the tool without having, the access is more limited there, and there AI could definitely help maybe to find creative poverty solutions and so on. I mean, again, it's about what we do with it. So I could clearly see how it could also help SDG goals move forward. Yeah. But yeah, in the end, it's what we do with it.
Yeah. Okay, we haven't got a rugby ball for you this year, so if that's your question.
I know.
Hello.
Where's the rugby ball?
Nice to see you.
I'm Ghislaine Boddington, Professor of Digital Immersion at University of Greenwich. So I just wanted to turn everything around on its head a bit, and maybe to ask all three of you individually to answer this, because I know Neil's going to answer it flat out and just like, but we're talking about, this amazing ability of AI now, particularly generated, to harvest and scrape and grab from everywhere and put it all together. And we're talking about here, particularly today, about business needing to be more creative, to continue and aid innovation, and ultimately to make money, to make more money. So But I'd just like to put you in a position of the other end of it and wonder what you'd think about the fact that so many professional artists and creatives, ideas and original thinkers' ideas are being scraped and gathered and put into these things and given into business professionals. So what would you say if you were in those roles, actually, about your ability to make money anymore? Because and I know this is a really obvious question, but I just don't think this has been put on the spot today totally. And what happens to data ownership and what happens to ideas and the IP in this scenario? Are we just, is there no need anymore for creative thinkers or creative beings because actually there's enough out there and business people can just scrape it all and make more money?
So I think, I was just thinking about how you develop that perceived threat into an opportunity. And I guess if there is more of that type of opportunity for people to create content, then there should be a way of them being recognized for that creation. And I think it needs to be something that is mutually beneficial and something that isn't just about take, but actually those that contribute at the source get the ability to be recognized and rewarded. How that's done, I think that's a wider question.
How's that done?
Yeah, that's
so referencing, like we do in academia, referencing sources.
That would be awesome, but I can imagine that is rather difficult, especially if it generates. I mean, if you look at how it generates pictures, it generates a new picture. So from different fragments and so on. So how do we reference and copyright? So I feel that's different. That's difficult. I think I would like to give two answers. First of all, because of the probability distribution of the function, it will turn out usually mainstream things, right? So I think there's still a nice spot for at the fringes and so on to be really creative, to have new content, and where the humans are simply much better at the moment. And the second thing is that I just this morning read a very nice article in Nature, it just came out, where they did experiments on how people perceive art, and then human-generated art versus AI-generated art versus hybridly generated art. And the humans always were evaluated much better. So there's still a lot of appreciation for the human generation. I don't know if that will change. That I cannot say, if it gets more common to do, but it is already common in the art sector to also have AI produced art installations and so on. And still, this was a representative sample, huge numbers of respondents, the human generated was really valued much higher. So I hope that's a bit of a good news. But yeah, some regulation. I'm no expert on regulation, so I don't know.
Charles is going to answer on my behalf.
Charles Baden, a professor of strategy here. Incredibly important question. I come from a family of artists. My brother-in-law has his music ripped off all the time and resold somewhere else without him getting royalties. This is going to happen on a much greater scale in AI. I think it's going to be a huge problem. And I think the lesson from the music industry tells us a lot. I mean, YouTube has been very instrumental in ripping off a lot of creative artists in music. I think I can use that word without them suing me. I think it's true. They've admitted to it. And I think the point is that we know that there's all kinds of effective mechanisms to now trace the originality of artists' work, particularly in the area of music. And that now YouTube actually has agreed to put that on the back end of YouTube and actually pay rather small compared to other royalties. I suspect that in the future, we're going to find that all the AI machine outputs are going to have tagged on the end these kinds of things, which are going to recognize creative content embodied in it. It's going to take some years to get to that point, and we know that the royalties they're going to pay are going to be miserably small because they claim they're not going to get any revenue from it, but it's going to be a slow process, but I think it will come, and I think it's going to be a huge problem for artists.
My answer is very simple. You remember I showed a Venn diagram at the beginning?
Yeah.
Most of our technology is not relying on Gen AI. I'm very uncomfortable with what is going on with the claims of fair use. It's clearly not fair. And we have my technical team push for much more of the use of this technology. I'm kind of a bit of I think they probably just think I'm a dinosaur, but there's real issues around this. Oh yes, all right, my colleagues are nodding in the front. But I'm very uncomfortable. There are other ways. AI is much more than Gen AI. And I think if you can balance, that's a solution. We don't have to just run for the simple answer. Gentleman at the back at last. I'm sorry about that.
That's right. My name is Hassan. Hello, I'm an alumni. First, just a simple question. What happens to the data that if we use Business Park, we enter there? And the other is just something that will probably become clear in time, but if I start using AI to send you emails and you reply using AI, will we ever talk to each other again?
Well, on that, long live the pandemic. The last point is I already get clearly some students send me emails that are clearly written by GPT, including the variables dear XXX at the top. So that is, I'm serious. Not this year's, by the way, boys, all right? Yeah, I've had that. That happens, so it is a risk. In terms of our data rules, regulations are on the website. Due to the API that we're using, we don't think we're exposing the content that our machine manipulates via your inputs to generate are being used to train GPT. That's based on what they tell us. And so we are reasonably confident that what you put in remains within our existing architecture. Talk to the technical team outside if you need more explanation. That's what they told me to say, because my technical knowledge is limited. There's a gentleman here who is, all right, this better be quick because there's good food outside.
Okay. And we can talk in person.
Yeah. Right, very quick answer.
Okay, Bruce Garvey, I am an alumnus, but I predate Cubs, so that shows how long ago I was. It suddenly occurred to me from those days, should we say, the 70s and the 80s, the big kind of holy grail of management was to, certainly in a corporate world, was to try and develop business enterprise models and business systems. And so what you've actually showed us today is I think I would say you've cracked it. There's a lot more to do, but the problem with those old systems, they treated all the disciplines in silos. And of course, most organizations and businesses, there's a hell of a lot of complexity driven by interconnectivity. Your model that I was quite impressed by, because although I have some reservations, but I would say that it's the closest I've got to actually you trying to generate issues which come out of the interconnectivities between the different domains. Am I correct in that assumption?
There's no built-in distinctions between vertical silos or departments, if that's what you mean. Yes.
But it's still dependent on, shall we say, the analyst or the manager to ask the right questions.
Absolutely.
So that human factor is still
that's why we see it as a service, so you have complementary creative thinking techniques and guidance. It's part of a process. Lovely question to finish on. I like that. Thank you very much. I'm going to stop there. I'm going to say thank you very much to Vera and Mark for their contribution.